What if the habits you've spent your life trying to hide were never flaws to begin with? What if staying up late, needing solitude, overthinking everything, or feeling out of sync with the world weren't signs that something's wrong, but signals that your mind works differently? Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never say out loud. Intelligence doesn't blend in well. It disrupts routines, questions norms, and refuses to run on autopilot. And because of that, highly intelligent people are often misunderstood, mislabeled, or quietly pressured to be more normal. But what if normal was never the goal? What if those strange habits were actually your mind's way of protecting clarity, depth, and meaning in a noisy, shallow world? In this video, you're going to see why the behaviors society calls weird are often the very mechanisms that fuel advanced thinking, creativity, and insight. And more importantly, you'll learn how to stop fighting your nature and start using it. Because once you understand what's really happening inside your mind, everything begins to make sense. He's noticed something most people rush past. Intelligent minds often drift towards solitude, not because they dislike people, but because silence sharpens cognition. In those quiet moments, intelligence stretches its legs and starts pacing. Solitude becomes a thinking gym, a place where overthinking turns into insight instead of noise. Folks mistake this for distance, but it's actually deep engagement with ideas. It's where unconventional habits are born, slowly and deliberately. No applause, no distractions, just raw mental focus. And honestly, that's where clarity usually sneaks in. From a mentor's view, solitude isn't emptiness. It's a controlled environment. High intelligence needs fewer external inputs to stay stimulated, so the mind supplies its own fuel. That's why hyper-awareness often shows up here, quietly, almost politely. While others seek chatter, the intelligent mind refines thoughts, revisits assumptions, and sharpens critical thinking. A practical move: schedule intentional alone time, even 20 minutes, no phone, no noise. A walk, a notebook, maybe a single question to wrestle with. That's not isolation, that's mental training. He's seen it countless times. The smartest people often think best when no one's watching. Solitude gives space for self-talk, internal debates, and mental simulations that never happen in crowds. This is where cognition connects dots that seemed unrelated yesterday. One idea bumps into another, sparks fly, and suddenly there's insight. It might look unproductive from the outside, but inside, it's a storm of progress. That's the paradox. Less movement, more growth. And yeah, it feels strange to those who don't live there. A simple example makes it real. Many writers, investors, and creators swear by early mornings or late nights alone, times when night creativity or quiet hours protect focus. Reading books like Deep Work by Cal Newport or journaling before bed helps channel that solitude into results. Even decision-making improves when done away from noise. The mind stops performing and starts processing. That's when overthinking transforms into strategy. And that shift, subtle as it is, changes everything. Still, solitude isn't the whole story. It's just the doorway. Once the mind settles, questions get louder, deeper, more existential. That's when intelligence begins poking at meaning, direction, and purpose. Existential anxiety doesn't show up out of nowhere. It follows silence. And right there, something else starts to form, quietly setting the stage for what comes next. How the mind behaves when the world finally goes quiet at night. He's learned that night creativity isn't rebellion against routine, it's alignment with cognition. When the world slows down, intelligent minds often speed up. Fewer notifications, fewer expectations, fewer interruptions pulling attention apart. That quiet creates a strange sense of freedom, like the brain finally gets the room it's been asking for all day. Overthinking doesn't vanish at night. It reorganizes itself. Thoughts line up, patterns emerge, and ideas feel sharper. What looks like odd behavior is often peak performance. From a mentor's lens, this has less to do with discipline and more to do with biology. Many intelligent people run on unconventional habits because their internal clock doesn't match society's schedule. At night, cognition breathes easier, no social pressure, no small talk, no urgent replies. Hyper-awareness settles into focus instead of anxiety. A practical step? Track energy instead of time. Notice when thinking feels effortless and protect that window like it matters, because it does. He's watched people fight this rhythm and lose. Forcing early mornings when the mind wakes up at midnight creates friction, not productivity. Intelligence thrives when it's allowed to work with its natural flow. That's why some of the best problem-solving happens late, when self-talk becomes clearer and critical thinking gets sharper. The silence invites honesty. No pretending, no rushing. Just the mind doing what it does best. And yeah, that can feel lonely, but it's incredibly effective. There's a real-world angle here. Many creators write drafts at night. Investors review decisions after dark. And thinkers plan strategy when everyone else sleeps. Reading a few pages of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill or reflecting on long-term goals before bed can channel night energy productively. Even journaling unresolved questions helps reduce existential anxiety instead of feeding it. Night doesn't create brilliance, it reveals it. The mind finally hears itself think, but here's the twist. When the lights go off, the mind doesn't always rest. Sometimes it starts talking back. Thoughts loop, questions multiply, and awareness sharpens a little too much. That's when self-talk turns from tool to constant companion. And right there, another strange habit begins to show itself, one that most people misunderstand completely. He's noticed that self-talk makes people uncomfortable, mostly because it exposes thinking in real time. Intelligent minds often externalize thoughts to organize complex cognition. Saying ideas out loud slows them down just enough to examine them. What sounds strange is actually strategic. Overthinking becomes structured instead of chaotic. It's the brain using language as a tool, not a crutch. And once you see it that way, the habit starts making sense. From a mentor's standpoint, talking to yourself is advanced problem solving. It allows critical thinking to unfold step by step, catching weak assumptions before they cause trouble. Hyper-awareness sharpens when thoughts are spoken, because the mind hears its own logic. A practical habit: walk while thinking out loud about a decision you're facing. Ask questions, challenge answers, refine them. It's like having a private boardroom for your brain. No distractions, no interruptions. He's seen high performers rehearse conversations that never happen, debates that stay internal, and future scenarios spoken into the air. This isn't confusion, it's simulation. Cognition runs through possible outcomes before action is taken. That's why unconventional habits like self-dialogue often lead to better judgment. The mind practices before the world tests it. And that practice quietly reduces mistakes most people never see coming. There's science hiding in plain sight here. Children talk to themselves naturally, and intelligence simply never outgrows the usefulness of that tool. Adults who keep the habit often show stronger focus and emotional control. Reading books like Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman can deepen awareness of how inner dialogue shapes decisions. Combine that with intentional self-talk, and overthinking turns into clarity. Words become anchors for thought. But the real shift happens when self-talk turns questioning. Why do I believe this? What if I'm wrong? Those questions don't just organize thought, they challenge comfort. Existential anxiety often sneaks in through those conversations. And once the mind starts questioning itself, it rarely stops there. Soon, it begins questioning everything else too. He's realized that intelligent people don't question to rebel, they question to understand. Their cognition refuses to run on autopilot, and that alone sets them apart. Rules, traditions, and "that's just how it is" explanations don't sit well with a mind built for critical thinking. Overthinking, in this case, is simply curiosity with stamina. It keeps pushing past the surface, searching for coherence. That habit can feel threatening to others, but for intelligence, it's oxygen. From a mentor's perspective, questioning is a form of respect for truth. Intelligent minds value logic over approval, even when it costs them comfort. Hyper-awareness makes contradictions hard to ignore, so the brain pokes at them gently or relentlessly. A practical exercise? When faced with a strong opinion, ask 3 quiet questions. What's the evidence? Who benefits from this belief? What happens if it's wrong? That alone strengthens cognition and sharpens judgment. He's watched people labeled as difficult simply because they wouldn't swallow ideas whole. In reality, they were just running mental quality control. This habit explains why intelligence often feels lonely. Constant questioning separates you from groupthink. But it also leads to unconventional habits that drive innovation. The mind isn't trying to win arguments, it's trying to make sense of the world, and that difference matters more than most people realize. There's a real-world payoff here. Many successful entrepreneurs, scientists, and investors credit their progress to questioning assumptions early. Reading books like The Almanac of Naval Ravikant or Principles by Ray Dalio reinforces this mindset. Question first, decide later. Apply it to daily life. Question spending habits, career paths, even emotional reactions. Over time, this builds a calm confidence rooted in understanding, not imitation. That's intelligence aging well. Still, constant questioning doesn't stop at systems or beliefs. It eventually turns inward. The mind begins asking bigger questions about meaning, time, and direction. That's when cognition crosses into something heavier, quieter, and harder to explain. Existential anxiety doesn't announce itself loudly. It slips in right after the questions get personal. He's seen how existential anxiety doesn't come from weakness, but from awareness turned up too high. Intelligent minds don't just think about today, they scan decades ahead. Cognition keeps asking what all this effort is for, where choices lead, and what time quietly takes away. Overthinking here isn't random worry, it's pattern recognition applied to life itself. Most people stay busy enough to avoid these questions. Intelligence doesn't get that luxury. From a mentor's view, hyper-awareness is both a gift and a weight. It allows people to sense emotional undercurrents, long-term consequences, and unspoken truths. But it also means the mind rarely rests in the present moment. A practical approach. Ground big thoughts with small rituals. Morning walks, simple workouts, or cooking without distractions help intelligence reconnect with the body. That balance keeps existential anxiety from spiraling into paralysis. He's noticed that intelligent people often feel out of sync with others, especially in conversations about meaning. While one person talks about weekend plans, another is quietly wondering about purpose and direction. That gap can feel isolating. Yet it's also where deep empathy forms. Hyper-awareness makes you sensitive to others' struggles, even when they don't name them. Intelligence doesn't just analyze life, it feels it deeply. There's wisdom in learning to manage this depth. Reading books like Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl helps reframe existential anxiety as responsibility, not burden. Journaling questions instead of answers gives cognition room to breathe. Even meditation, done simply, 5 minutes of focused breathing can soften overthinking. These practices don't erase big questions. They teach the mind how to carry them without collapsing. And here's the subtle truth. Existential anxiety often reshapes behavior. It influences routines, preferences, and unconventional habits that others don't understand. The mind starts choosing depth over noise, meaning over appearance. That shift isn't obvious at first, but it changes how intelligence moves through the world. And soon, those inner changes begin to show up externally in ways that look strange. He's come to understand that unconventional habits aren't defects, they're signals. Intelligence leaks into behavior in subtle ways. Preferences for quiet, odd routines, selective social energy. Cognition optimizes for depth, not appearances, so habits evolve to protect focus. Overthinking trims the unnecessary and keeps what works, even if it looks odd. People notice the difference before they understand it, and misunderstanding is often the price of thinking differently. From a mentor's angle, habits are strategies in disguise. When intelligence senses overload, it simplifies life to preserve clarity. Hyper-awareness makes inefficiency unbearable, so routines become minimalist and intentional. A practical move? Audit daily habits and ask, does this feed my thinking or drain it? Replace mindless scrolling with a short read or reflective notes. Small tweaks compound into cognitive calm. That's not weird. It's wise. He's seen how intelligence quietly rejects norms that don't serve growth. Skipping small talk, eating the same meals, wearing simple clothes. These choices free mental bandwidth. Cognition hates waste. Overthinking, when guided, turns into optimization. What outsiders call rigid or strange is often a deliberate attempt to reduce friction. Less noise equals more signal. There's a real-world parallel in high performers who simplify aggressively. Think of creators who batch tasks or leaders who guard mornings fiercely. Reading Essentialism by Greg McKeown reinforces this idea. Do less, better. Apply it by creating focus blocks or setting clear social boundaries. Unconventional habits aren't antisocial, they're pro-clarity. Intelligence knows what it needs, but signals don't exist in a vacuum. Once habits diverge from the norm, reactions follow. Labels, judgments, assumptions. That social friction shapes behavior even more. And right there, another layer appears. How intelligent minds cope with being misunderstood. He's noticed that intelligence often pays a social tax. When cognition runs deeper than the room, misunderstanding becomes routine. People interpret silence as arrogance, distance as coldness, and unconventional habits as flaws. Overthinking doesn't help here. It replays interactions, searching for what went wrong. Hyper-awareness picks up on subtle shifts in tone, looks and pauses others never notice. And slowly, the intelligent mind realizes it's being read through the wrong lens. From a mentor's perspective, being misunderstood isn't a failure. It's a mismatch. Intelligent people often communicate in layers, while most conversations stay on the surface. Critical thinking doesn't translate well into sound bites. A practical approach? Choose clarity over completeness. Share conclusions, not the entire mental process. This reduces friction without dimming intelligence. Sometimes saying less actually helps you be understood more. He's seen people shrink themselves to fit in, and it rarely ends well. Suppressing cognition creates internal tension, feeding existential anxiety instead of easing it. Intelligence needs expression, not permission. When misunderstood, the instinct is to explain everything, but that often backfires. Not everyone needs access to your inner world. Discernment becomes a survival skill. There's a grounded way to handle this. Build 1 or 2 spaces where depth is welcomed, a trusted friend, a journal, a creative outlet. Reading Quiet by Susan Cain helps normalize this experience and reframes misunderstanding as strength. Apply it by limiting emotional exposure in environments that don't reward depth. Overthinking eases when intelligence stops trying to convince everyone. Peace replaces performance. Yet even with boundaries, misunderstanding leaves a mark. It pushes intelligent minds inward, sometimes too far. Solitude deepens, habits narrow, and the inner world grows louder. That's when the line between healthy isolation and withdrawal starts to blur. He's observed a subtle shift that happens over time. Solitude, once nourishing, can quietly slide into withdrawal if left unchecked. Intelligence enjoys being alone, but overthinking can convince the mind that isolation is safer than engagement. Cognition starts avoiding friction altogether. No debates, no explanations, no misunderstandings. Hyper-awareness flags every social cost before it happens. What began as a healthy boundary can harden into a wall. From a mentor's stance, the difference between solitude and withdrawal is intention. Solitude is chosen, withdrawal is defensive. Intelligent minds sometimes confuse the two because both feel quiet. A practical check-in helps. After time alone, do you feel clearer or heavier? Energized or drained? If the answer leans negative, it's a signal to recalibrate. Balance isn't about forcing social life, it's about preventing shrinkage. He's seen how withdrawal feeds a loop. Less interaction leads to more overthinking, which increases existential anxiety, which then justifies more isolation. Cognition becomes a closed system, brilliant but echoing. Ideas don't get tested, emotions don't get mirrored, and perspective narrows. Intelligence still works, but it loses contrast. And without contrast, even sharp minds can drift off course. There's a grounded way out that doesn't betray depth. Choose low-noise connection, one meaningful conversation, a shared walk, a small group built around ideas. Reading The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga helps reframe connection as freedom, not obligation. Apply this by scheduling connection like you schedule thinking, intentionally, sparingly, but consistently. That keeps cognition flexible instead of brittle. And here's the quiet truth. Intelligent minds don't need crowds, but they do need mirrors. Without them, self-talk becomes unchecked, and assumptions harden into beliefs. That's when the inner voice grows too loud and too convincing. He's learned that an intelligent mind carries a powerful inner narrator. That voice helps navigate complexity, anticipate risks, and refine decisions through constant self-talk. But overthinking can quietly hand it the steering wheel. Cognition starts narrating every move, every feeling, every outcome. Hyper-awareness turns up the volume, and suddenly the mind feels busy, even in stillness. Trusting the inner voice matters, but so does knowing when to pause it. From a mentor's perspective, the inner voice is a guide, not a commander. Intelligence works best when it listens, evaluates, then chooses. A practical habit helps here. Write thoughts down instead of replaying them mentally. This externalizes cognition and lowers emotional intensity. Once on paper, ideas lose their grip and gain perspective. Overthinking becomes review, not rumination. Control quietly returns to the thinker. He's seen people confuse intuition with anxiety. The difference is subtle but crucial. Intuition feels calm, even when it warns. Anxiety feels urgent and loud. Hyper-awareness blurs that line if unchecked. One useful practice is delaying action by 24 hours on emotionally charged decisions. If the thought stays clear without pressure, it's likely insight. If it fades or mutates, it was noise. Intelligence learns by observing itself. There's strength in selective trust. Many disciplined thinkers use meditation, prayer, or focused breathing to observe thoughts without obeying them. Reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle helps frame awareness as presence, not control. Apply this by naming thoughts, planning, worry, analysis, and letting them pass. Cognition stays sharp, but it no longer dominates. Balance returns quietly without force. When the inner voice finds its proper place, something shifts. Habits soften, anxiety loosens, and intelligence becomes more fluid. The mind stops fighting itself and starts cooperating. And right there, the final realization waits. He's come to see that intelligence doesn't need to be fixed, hidden, or explained away. It needs to be understood and guided. A different kind of mind comes with unconventional habits, deep cognition, and periods of overthinking, but also with rare clarity. The mistake many people make is trying to normalize themselves into mediocrity. Hyper-awareness was never meant to disappear. It was meant to be directed. When accepted, it stops feeling like a burden and starts acting like an advantage. From a mentor's view, the goal isn't balance in the traditional sense, it's alignment. Intelligent people thrive when their environment fits their cognition. That might mean fewer commitments, deeper work, or non-traditional routines. A practical step? Design your life backward from your best mental states. Identify when you think clearly, feel calm, and create well, then protect those conditions. Intelligence flourishes when life is built around it, not when it's forced into someone else's mold. He's watched people stop apologizing for their depth, and everything changed. Overthinking softened because it no longer had to defend itself. Existential anxiety eased when meaning was allowed to be personal, not performative. Unconventional habits stopped feeling strange once they were seen as tools. Cognition works best when it's trusted and respected. Confidence, in this case, isn't loud, it's quiet permission to be yourself. There's wisdom in choosing environments wisely. Not every space rewards depth, and that's okay. Reading Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans helps reframe life as a series of experiments, not rigid paths. Apply this by testing small changes, new routines, fewer inputs, clearer boundaries. Intelligence responds well to experimentation. It learns quickly when given room. And here's the subtle truth most people miss. Once you stop fighting your mind, you stop leaking energy. Life feels lighter, choices clearer, habits intentional. You don't become less intelligent, you become more effective. Now comes the part most people skip, doing something with what you've just realized. If these habits resonated with you, needing solitude, overthinking, questioning everything, feeling out of sync, ask yourself this: how many times have you tried to silence your mind instead of learning how to guide it? What would change if, instead of fighting your nature, you designed your life around how you actually think? Small choices matter here. Protect quiet time, question routines that drain you. Choose depth over noise even when it feels uncomfortable. So let me ask you directly, what habit have you been judging yourself for that might actually be your strength? And what would happen if you stopped apologizing for it today? Intelligence grows when it's applied, not just understood. Take one idea from this video and test it this week. Just one. Awareness without action is just another form of overthinking. If this content made you feel seen, understood, or challenged, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Here, we don't simplify the mind, we learn how to live well with its depth.